Assalamu alaikum students, this is Dr. Haseed and today we are going to discuss yet another very important topic, that is cerebellum. And in your house job you will frequently encounter patients of cerebellar lesion. So this is important not only for your professional examination point of view but also for your house job as well. So by the end of today's session, inshallah, you will be able to classify different parts of cerebellum. We will learn the basic anatomy of cerebellum, some of which you have already discussed in your anatomy classes. So we will learn how can we classify cerebellum on the basis of its anatomy as well as on the basis of its functions and physiology. So then we will discuss the functions of the individual portion of the cerebellum. Each part of cerebellum has specific function and we will discuss these functions in detail. And if time permits, we will discuss the input and
Assalamu
output
alaikum. Ji,
fibers
can
of
you hear me?
cerebellum.
Imran Saab.
So we will cover cerebellum in two lectures. Half of the course will be covered today, inshallah, and the remaining part will be discussed tomorrow. So let's begin. As far as the classification of brain is concerned,
जी क्या सुन
you
सकते हैं
can
आप
see
मुझे?
how cerebellum is placed here. Cerebellum is a part of hindbrain, mind you. If you remember the basic classification that you have read in your school life, brain can be divided into three parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The medical terminologies are important for you people, so you have to remember, you have to use the medical terminologies instead of these layman terms. So, prosencephalon is the medical term for forebrain,
Okay, let's wait for 10
mesencephalon
minutes.
for midbrain, and rhombencephalon for hindbrain. The hindbrain can be subdivided into two further portions, metencephalon and myelencephalon, where myelencephalon includes medulla oblongata and metencephalon is in metencephalon we have pons and cerebellum. So cerebellum is a component of hindbrain. Here you can see the anatomy of cerebellum, how it is positioned posterior to the brainstem. You are viewing the lateral section of the cerebellum. This is the lateral section of the cerebellum and this is the lateral section of the brainstem. This portion is pons and inferior to it is medulla oblongata. So posterior to the brainstem is the cerebellum. That is why we have placed cerebellum in hindbrain portion or rhombencephalon, because this is located posterior to the brainstem, posterior to the pons. Here you can see the cut section of the lateral surface of the cerebellum, and as far as the cerebellar division is concerned, we can divide the cerebellar hemispheres into different lobes. Remember, each cerebellum has two halves, and these halves are known as cerebellar hemispheres, just like cerebral hemispheres. And both these cerebellar hemispheres are connected in the midline by the structure known as vermis. So within each cerebellar hemisphere, there are multiple lobes, and the three important lobes include the anterior lobe, located anteriorly, closer to the brainstem. Then comes the primary fissure. This is the primary fissure. Here, this vertical groove is the primary fissure, and the lobe posterior to the primary fissure is the posterior lobe. So the primary fissure is the line of demarcation which separates the anterior lobe from the posterior. Then there's the third lobe known as the flocculonodular lobe. Very important lobe, although small in size. Flocculonodular lobe. So the parietal lobe is separated by, the posterior lobe is separated by the flocculonodular lobe by yet another fissure like this. This is the posterolateral fissure which separates the posterior lobe from the flocculonodular lobe. So each cerebellar hemisphere can be divided into multiple lobes, and the important lobes include anterior lobe, which is separated by the primary fissure from the posterior lobe, and posterior lobe is separated by the posterolateral fissure from the third lobe, that is flocculonodular lobe. So we can divide cerebellum on the basis of lobes. Sometimes we can divide the cerebellum on the basis of zones. So there are two ways for the description purpose. One is on the basis of lobes, the other is on the basis of zones. Here you can see, as we have already discussed, the anterior lobe. This complete portion is the anterior lobe, and this is the primary fissure. This red line is the line of demarcation which separates the anterior lobe from the posterior lobe. And the other fissure is on the posterolateral area like this. And this fissure will separate the posterior lobe from the third flocculonodular lobe. So there are three lobes: one anterior lobe, two posterior lobe, and the third is the flocculonodular lobe. Sometimes the posterior lobe is labeled as the middle lobe, but the preferred terminology is the posterior lobe. So both terminologies are correct. Posterior lobe or the middle lobe, both are correct because it is placed between the anterior and flocculonodular lobes. That is why sometimes it is labeled as the middle lobe. So this is the division on the basis of lobes. Similarly, we can vertically divide the cerebellar surface. As you can see, these vertical lines, vertical shaded regions, they indicate the division on the basis of multiple zones. For example, within each cerebellar hemisphere, on the left side as well as on the right side, the lateral most area is the lateral zone of cerebellar hemisphere. This is the lateral zone of the left cerebellar hemisphere. Similarly, lateral zone of the right cerebellar hemisphere. So there are two lateral zones, one on each side. Medial to the lateral zone is the intermediate zone. So this blue shaded region here, this blue shaded region is the intermediate zone. Just like the lateral zones, there are two intermediate zones, one on each side of the cerebellar hemisphere. Two lateral zones and two intermediate zones. And both the cerebellar hemispheres are connected by a midline structure, and this midline structure is known as the vermis. Here you can see this is the vermis area, and there's a single vermis which connects the two cerebellar hemispheres. So we can divide cerebellum on the basis of lobes. We can divide cerebellum on the basis of zones. Anterior lobe separated by the primary fissure from the posterior lobe, and the posterolateral fissure separates the posterior lobe from the flocculonodular lobe. So three lobes, anterior, posterior, and flocculonodular, and three zones: lateral, intermediate, and vermis. Vermis is the single midline zone. Remember, single midline zone connecting the two cerebellar hemispheres is the vermis area. On either side of the vermis is the intermediate zone, and on either side of the intermediate zone is the lateral zone. We have discussed the concept of homunculus, sensory homunculus, and motor homunculus in the cerebral cortex. And what is homunculus? This is the topographical representation of all the regions of the body over the surface of the cerebrum. Similarly, these topographical areas of the body, they are mapped over the surface of cerebellum as well. As you can see, this is the anterior view of the cerebellum. This is the midline structure, vermis. This capital V indicates the vermis. So all this region is the vermis area. As you can see, the truncal areas of the body, the axial skeleton of the body, they are located, they are mapped within the vermis zone. This means the body movement involving the trunk and the axial skeleton, all these regions are controlled by this portion of the cerebellum, that is vermis. And if we go on the intermediate zone, this capital I on either side of V is the intermediate zone. So this is the intermediate zone here. So on either side of the vermis area is the intermediate zone. And as you can see, the limbs, both the limbs, upper limbs and the lower limbs, they are mapped within the intermediate zone. Not only the limbs, but the facial area is also represented over the intermediate zones. This means all the movements, all the voluntary skilled movements, especially movements of the distal portion of the limbs involving hands and fingers, all these type of movements, complex movements, they are controlled by this intermediate zone of the cerebellum. So axial skeleton and the truncal areas of the body, they are represented in the vermis zone. All the limbs, especially the distal portion of the limbs, including hands and fingers, plus the facial areas, they are represented over the intermediate zone. So this is the topographical representation over the surface of the cerebellar cortex. The thing to remember is that there is no topographical representation over the lateral zones. Here you can see all the lateral zones, all these areas, they are empty. No topographical representation over the lateral zones of the cerebellar cortex. Only the vermis area and the intermediate zones are being mapped by these shaded regions, as you can see, truncal area and the axial skeleton within the vermis area, distal segments of the limbs, upper limbs, lower limbs, especially fingers and hands, including the facial areas, they are represented over the intermediate zone, and no representation, no topographical representation over the lateral zones. We are waiting for the remaining participants. So if you get a question in your physiology exam that classifies cerebellum on the basis of its functions, this is the classification you will have to write down in your physiology paper. Remember, there are multiple ways to classify cerebellum, but this is for your physiology exam. Physiology is the study of normal function, and this is on the basis of function. And the three divisions of the cerebellum include vestibulocerebellum, number one. Number two is the spinocerebellum. And the third part is cerebrocerebellum. The other name of cerebrocerebellum is corticocerebellum, or sometimes known as pontocerebellum. So this is the functional division of the cerebellum on the basis of its physiology. As the name indicates, vestibulocerebellum is connected with the vestibular system that we have discussed already. If you remember the central vestibular pathway, you can recall that the vestibular nuclei, they give rise to axons which terminate within the cerebellum as well. So not only maintenance of equilibrium is the function of vestibular system, but this function is also performed by the cerebellum as well. The part of the cerebellum which is connected with the vestibular apparatus is known as vestibulocerebellum. Similarly, the part of the cerebellum which gives rise to multiple axons which run through the spinal cord as descending tracts. This portion is known as spinocerebellum. Spino from spinal cord. Can you hear me? And similarly, hear me? The portion of the cerebellum which is connected with the just give me a green higher center, that is so that we can cerebral cortex, is known as cerebrocerebellum, or sometimes corticocerebellum or pontocerebellum. The easiest terminology is cerebrocerebellum or cerebrum. So this is the functional classification, or you can say the classification on the basis of physiology. Then we can also classify cerebellum on the basis of the evolutionary stages. And this classification is known as the phylogenetical classification. You must have heard this term, phylogenetical classification. Phylogenetical classification means on the basis of its embryological development, that is, on the basis of its evolutionary stages. So we can classify cerebellum on the basis of the evolutionary stages into three portions. The first one is archicerebellum. The second portion is paleocerebellum, and the third is neocerebellum. So archicerebellum is the oldest of all cerebellum portions. Archi means very old. Similarly, the next evolutionary stage for the development of cerebellum is the portion of paleocerebellum, where paleo means ancient or old. Archi, very old, paleo, ancient or old. And neocerebellum is the last stage of evolutionary development, embryological development. Neocerebellum, neo means new. So the new portion is the neocerebellum. So two ways to classify cerebellum on the basis of its functions or physiology, on the basis of its embryological development, on the basis of its evolutionary stages. One thing to remember is that these terminologies are synonymously used. Vestibulocerebellum is synonymously used for the archicerebellum. Both are the same thing. Similarly, paleocerebellum is synonymous for spinocerebellum, and neocerebellum is synonymous for cerebrocerebellum. So there is overlapping between the two types of classification. So when you read the term neocerebellum, we are referring to which portion? Cerebrocerebellum. Similarly, paleocerebellum, when we use this term, we are referring to which portion? Spinocerebellum. As we have discussed the two types of classification, phylogenetical classification and functional classification. Vestibulocerebellum is the oldest, spinocerebellum is old or paleocerebellum, and corticocerebellum is new or neocerebellum. And you can see in this figure, these shaded regions, you can demarcate which portion of cerebellum is vestibulocerebellum. This yellow region, which includes the flocculonodular lobe here, this area involving the flocculonodular lobe, this portion is the vestibulocerebellum, which is connected with the vestibular system. And small portion of the lingula near the anterior lobe, sometimes it is included in vestibulocerebellum as well. Similarly, this purple shaded region, this is the region of spinocerebellum. As you can see, this is the region of spinocerebellum towards the vermis, adjacently placed to the anterior lobe, and the vermis area towards the adjacent end of the flocculonodular lobe. All these areas, they are portions of spinocerebellum or paleocerebellum. And the middle portion involving the lateral zones, all these lateral zones. Remember, the lateral zones of each cerebellar hemisphere, these lateral zones are part of neocerebellum. So neocerebellum contains the lateral zones. Flocculonodular lobe is the vestibulocerebellum, and the remaining portion is the spinocerebellum. Again, you can see the functional classification of cerebellum. The first or the oldest is archicerebellum or the vestibulocerebellum, shaded in blue color. Paleocerebellum is the next stage of development as far as the phylogenesis is concerned, and this is shaded in the purple color, and the green color is the latest stage of phylogenesis, that is neocerebellum or pontocerebellum. Remember, the preferred terminology is cerebrocerebellum. Pontocerebellum, cerebrocerebellum, corticocerebellum, all are the same thing. So you can see the vestibulocerebellum, it includes the flocculonodular lobe. This portion is important. The lobe, which is separated by the posterior lobe by the posterolateral fissure. This is the flocculonodular lobe. So this region is included in the vestibulocerebellum. Sometimes the lingula, which is placed towards the anterior lobe, can be included in this vestibulocerebellum as well. The vermis area is the paleocerebellum, and the lateral zones, these are the lateral zones, these are the areas of neocerebellum. So we can divide cerebellum on the basis of lobes, anterior lobe, posterior or middle lobe, and flocculonodular lobe. We can classify cerebellum on the basis of zones: midline, single zone, vermis. Then comes the intermediate zone, lateral to vermis on each side, and the third zone is the lateral zone on either side of the intermediate zone. This is the anatomical division. Remember, if we discuss physiological classification, these are the three divisions that you have to write down: vestibulocerebellum, spinocerebellum, and pontocerebellum. Now this figure is very important. This is taken from Ganong's review of medical physiology. I will request the students to go through the pages of Ganong's physiology. This is very comprehensive and descriptive. Here you can see all the three divisions, the three functional divisions of the cerebellum, starting from the vestibulocerebellum. This is the portion of the flocculonodular lobe. Then comes the region of cerebrocerebellum, the second division, cerebrocerebellum. Cerebrocerebellum includes the lateral zones on each side. This capital N indicates the lateral zones. And the third portion is spinocerebellum. This is the third part of cerebellum. Spinocerebellum includes the vermis area as well as the intermediate zones on either side of the vermis. So these are the three functional divisions of cerebellum. As we have discussed, the primary function of vestibulocerebellum as it is connected with the vestibular apparatus is in maintenance of equilibrium. So this is the primary function of vestibulocerebellum, maintenance of balance and equilibrium. Since some of the vestibular nuclei they terminate in the third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerve nuclei, and these cranial nerve nuclei are involved in extraocular movements. So vestibulocerebellum to some degree will control extraocular movements as well. So not only this portion of cerebellum is responsible for maintenance of equilibrium, maintenance of body balance, but to a certain extent, different extraocular movements are also controlled by the vestibulocerebellum as well. So this is the primary function of vestibulocerebellum: balance, equilibrium, and eye movements. Remember the three functions: balance and equilibrium maintenance, and eye movements. As far as the cerebrocerebellum is concerned, the primary function of this region of cerebellum is in the motor planning of the voluntary movements. Since this is related to the cerebral cortex, which is considered as the cognitive portion of the brain where much of the thinking takes place. So all the cognitive parts like planning a motor movement, programming a motor movement, or sequencing and timing of different types of voluntary movements, all these functions are performed by the cerebrocerebellum. So the primary function of cerebrocerebellum is to plan a movement, to program a movement. It plans the timing of the movement, not only timing, but sequencing the rate and range and direction of different types of voluntary movements. All these are the functions of cerebrocerebellum. And the third part is the spinocerebellum, as it is connected with the multiple axons with the descending tracts of the spinal cord. We can label it as the spinocerebellum. So movement of the different portions of distal segments of the limbs, especially upper limb, lower limb, all these are controlled by the spinocerebellum. Moreover, spinocerebellum is responsible for control, or you can say for regulation of muscle tone as well. So before moving on, just have a quick recap. Cerebellum consists of two cerebellar hemispheres, one on each side, connected by a midline single vermis. We can divide the parts horizontally into lobes with the help of fissures: primary fissure separating anterior lobe from posterior lobe, and posterolateral fissure separating posterior lobe from flocculonodular lobe. So three lobes: anterior, middle, and flocculonodular. This is on the horizontal plane. Similarly, we can divide the cerebellum in vertical plane as well, vertical axis: midline single vermis, and on each side of the vermis are the intermediate zones, and lateral to it is the lateral zone. So two lateral zones, one on each side, two intermediate zones on either side, and a single midline vermis. So this is the phylogenetical classification on the basis of its embryological stages. The oldest is Archicerebellum, Next part to develop is the paleocerebellum, and the latest part is the neocerebellum. Archicerebellum consists of the vestibulocerebellum, which is the portion responsible for maintenance of equilibrium. Then comes the spinocerebellum, related with the spinal tracts, and the third one is cerebrocerebellum or pontocerebellum, sometimes known as corticocerebellum. I will suggest that you should prefer the term cerebrocerebellum instead of pontocerebellum or corticocerebellum. So phylogenetic classification, functional classification. As far as the functions are concerned, this is the list of the primary functions performed by the vestibulocerebellum. First and foremost is maintenance of body balance or equilibrium. So equilibrium, one of the five special senses, is not only maintained by the vestibular system but also cerebellum. And the vestibulocerebellum portion is the part responsible for maintenance of equilibrium or body balance. So whenever there is damage to this portion of cerebellum, obviously the patient, the subject will not be able to maintain his body posture or will not be able to walk in a straight line. So the equilibrium will be disturbed. So this is the first function of vestibulocerebellum, maintenance of equilibrium. The second most important function is the control of postural movements. This is again very important, and all these postural movements, they are related to maintenance of equilibrium or body balance, you can say. So these are interrelated functions. And the third function is the control of extraocular movements. We have discussed that the vestibular nuclei, they give rise to axons which terminate in cranial nerve 3, 4 and 6 nuclei. So termination at these cranial nerve nuclei is responsible for control of extraocular movement. So the third important function of vestibulocerebellum is control of eye movements. So this is the vestibulocerebellum part, which includes the flocculonodular lobe, or you can say on the basis of phylogenesis, this is the archicerebellum. And the second part is paleocerebellum or spinocerebellum. Now this spinocerebellum again has multiple functions. The primary function of spinocerebellum is control of the distal portion of limb movements. So all the movements of hands, all the voluntary movements, voluntary skilled movements of fingers, such movements are coordinated by the spinocerebellum. So spinocerebellum is the coordinator of these skilled voluntary movements. This will coordinate and smoothen the movements of the upper limbs as well as the lower limbs, especially fingers and hand movements. So this is the first function of spinocerebellum. The second function of spinocerebellum is the damping effect or the damping function. Now, by this terminology, damping, we mean overshoot prevention. So when you point out to any object, for example, if you are asked to pick a glass of water, you place your hand towards it, and this is known as pinpoint perfection. And if you overshoot, this will indicate damage to the spinocerebellar leaf. So this is the function performed by spinocerebellum. The next function, the third function, is the control of ballistic movements. Now, ballistic movements again are fine skilled movements, and the easiest example is the movement of fingers during typing. So all these fine skilled movements of fingers, these movements are coordinated by spinocerebellum once again. And the fourth function of spinocerebellum is the comparator function. I repeat, comparator function means it compares the actual movement with the intended movement. So this function is known as the comparator function or the comparator effect. So spinocerebellum will compare the two types of movements. One which is intended before you perform the movement, and one which is the actual movement. So this will compare the two types of movements, and if there is any error, this will be automatically corrected by spinocerebellum. So this is known as the comparator effect or the comparator function performed by the spinocerebellum. By comparator function, we mean it compares the intended movement with the actual movement. And if there is any error in the actual movement, this portion will automatically send corrective signals to the cerebrum through the spinal cord, and the movement will be corrected. This is known as the comparator effect. And the fifth and the last function of spinocerebellum is regulation of muscle tone, skeletal muscle tone. By muscle tone, we mean partial state of contraction of the muscle even at rest. So whenever the tonicity is measured, the skeletal muscles, they exhibit some degree of partial contraction even during rest, and we call it as the muscle tone. And spinocerebellum, this portion of cerebellum is responsible for increasing the muscle tone of the skeletal muscle. So whenever there is damage to this portion, this will result in hypotonia. Hypotonia is decreased skeletal muscle tone, less than normal tone. This means this portion of cerebellum, spinocerebellum, is responsible for increasing and hence maintaining and regulating the skeletal muscle tone. So these are the five most important functions of spinocerebellum. The third part of cerebellum is the cerebrocerebellum, sometimes known as corticocerebellum or pontocerebellum. This is the, on the basis of phylogenesis, the latest part to develop. That is why, phylogenetically speaking, we can classify cerebrocerebellum as neocerebellum. And if you remember, cerebrocerebellum is the area of the lateral zone. So if you remember the two lateral zones of cerebellum on either side of the vermis, these are the region of cerebrocerebellum. And the first and most important function of this part is planning of the voluntary skilled movements. Since it is connected with the cerebral cortex, which is considered as the cognitive part of the brain. So all the cognitive skills will be performed by this portion of cerebellum. So it will program the movements, it will plan the movements. How it will plan? It will determine the timing of the movement, it will determine the rate, range, and direction of each complex movement. So this is known as the development of motor imagery. So motor imagery is developed by this neocerebellum, and it develops the motor imagery before it performs the actual movement. That is why the second part is its role in extra motor prediction. So yet another function of cerebrocerebellum is its role in extra motor prediction. So extra motor predictive function. It predicts the movement before you actually perform the movement. The second most important function of neocerebellum or cerebrocerebellum. As we have discussed, the cerebrocerebellum is related to the cerebral cortex, which is considered as the cognitive part. So it is also responsible for storage of some sort of procedural memory as well. So recent research indicates that this portion of cerebrocerebellum, is also involved in memory storage, especially the procedural memories. And what do we mean by procedural memory? The memory of any procedure. For example, driving a car, riding a bicycle, all these voluntary, complex, skilled movements, they are being stored as procedural memory. So the three parts of cerebellum include vestibulocerebellum, responsible for maintenance of equilibrium, posture, and it controls eye movements. The second part is the spinocerebellum, which controls the distal movement of limbs, especially the fingers and hands. Then it has damping effect to prevent overshoot phenomenon. It is also involved in coordination of different ballistic movements, for example, movement of fingers during typing. Then the comparator function of spinocerebellum, it compares the intended movement with the actual movement. And if there is any error in the actual movement, it will automatically send corrective signals. So this is the comparator effect and its role in increasing the skeletal muscle tone as well. And the last part is cerebrocerebellum, which is considered for the planning, sequencing, and timing of the complex movements. Not only it plans and programs the movement, but it predicts the movement as well. And some sort of procedural memory is also stored within this portion of cerebellum as well. So we have discussed in detail the basic anatomy of cerebellum. We have discussed multiple lobes, multiple zones of cerebellum, how fissures can divide the cerebellum into multiple lobes, and how on the basis of its embryological development we can classify cerebellum, and how on the basis of its function we can classify cerebellum. So these are some facts to remember. As the word cerebellum, if you look at the origin of the word, it is diminutive of the cerebrum, or you can say little brain or younger sibling of the cerebrum. And there are three cerebellar peduncles: inferior cerebellar peduncle, middle cerebellar peduncle, and superior cerebellar peduncle. And these cerebellar peduncles connect the different portions of cerebellum with the brainstem. For example, the superior cerebellar peduncle will connect the cerebellum with the mesencephalon, that is midbrain. Similarly, the middle cerebellar peduncle will connect cerebellum with the pons, and the inferiormost will connect it with the medulla oblongata. Another fact to remember is that the number of neurons are about half of the cerebellum. So number of neurons are about half of the cerebrum. So if you compare the size of cerebrum with cerebellum, you can see a drastic difference, but the number of neurons are great. So the cerebellum is rich in neurons, rich in motor neurons, and its structure is uniform throughout. So that is the reason the control is always ipsilateral. So now we will discuss the multiple input and output fibers, or you can say the afferent nerve fibers and the efferent nerve fibers of cerebellum. As far as the afferent nerve fibers, or you can say the input fibers are concerned, the contralateral cortex is connected with the middle cerebellar peduncle, and ipsilateral proprioceptive information is received by the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So remember, there are multiple types of nerve fibers within the cerebellum. These nerve fibers include climbing fibers and mossy fibers. We will discuss these fibers in the coming slides. Climbing fibers and mossy fibers. Both are the input fibers. Both are excitatory fibers. And the output is sent to the contralateral cortex here. And the output fiber is the Purkinje cells. Remember the cells, Purkinje cells. And the information, the signal transmission will be sent via these Purkinje cells to the deep nuclei of cerebellum. Remember, there are four deep nuclei of cerebellum. The first is dentate. Dentate nucleus is the first nucleus. The emboliform nucleus is the nucleus medial to it, the second nucleus. The third nucleus is globose. So medial to emboliform is globose nucleus. Similarly, the medial most nucleus is the fastigial nucleus. So these are the four deep cerebellar nuclei. And remember the mnemonic, lateromedially, do not eat greasy food. Don't eat greasy food. Dentate, lateralmost, medial to dentate is emboliform, medial to emboliform is globose, and fastigial nucleus is the medial most nucleus. So lateromedially, don't eat greasy food. These are the deep cerebellar nuclei which receive the signal from the Purkinje cells. So within the gray matter and the white matter of cerebellum, there are multiple types of fibers. Some of them are known as the projection fibers. Then there are association fibers. And the third type of fibers are commissural fibers. So projection fibers, they leave or enter the cerebellum and connect it with the other parts of CNS. And these are connected by the three cerebellar peduncles, inferior connected with the medulla, middle cerebellar peduncle connected with the pons, and superior cerebellar peduncle connected with the mesencephalon, or you can say the midbrain. So these are the projection fibers which are connected through these cerebellar peduncles. And the second category is association fibers. Association fibers, they connect different regions of the same cerebellar hemisphere. Remember, different regions of the same cerebellar hemisphere are connected by association fibers. And the third type is commissural fibers, which connect the two cerebellar hemispheres with each other. So the right cerebellar hemisphere is connected by the left cerebellar hemisphere with the help of these commissural fibers. So the white matter of the cerebellum contains three types of fibers: projection fibers, which are connected with the CNS through the three cerebellar peduncles with medulla, pons, and midbrain. And different regions of the same cerebellar hemisphere are connected with each other with the help of association fibers, the second type. And the two cerebellar hemispheres are connected with each other with the third type of fiber, that is the commissural fiber. So you must have read the afferent tracts and efferent tracts to cerebellum in your anatomy classes as well. Now this table is taken from again the same review book, Ganome's Review of Medical Physiology, and you can see the different types of afferent tracts related to the cerebellum. We have discussed few of them already. The first is the vestibulocerebellum pathway. Vestibulocerebellar pathway. As the name indicates, it is connected with the vestibular system or the vestibular apparatus. So impulses will be received from the labyrinth or the inner ear or the vestibular apparatus via these vestibular nuclei. The four vestibular nuclei, the four divisions of the vestibular nuclei: superior, inferior, medial, and lateral, where the other name for lateral is Dieter's nucleus. So all these vestibular impulses will be received, will be transmitted by the vestibulocerebellar afferent tract. Similarly, there are dorsal and ventral spinocerebellar pathways, and the impulses will be transmitted to proprioceptors, and there are multiple proprioceptors located within the surface of the muscle joint, skeletal muscle joint, and the signal transmission will be carried from joint proprioceptor. Similarly, there are other afferent pathways like cuneo-cerebellar pathway, tectocerebellar pathway, or pontocerebellar pathway. Tectocerebellar, as the name indicates, this is related to the tectum of the midbrain, where tectum of the midbrain, or you can say the tectum of the mesencephalon, consists of the colliculi, the four colliculi, inferior and superior colliculi, one for the auditory input, one for the visual input. So all the auditory signals, all the visual signals via these two superior and two inferior colliculi, all these signals will be transmitted through these tectocerebellar afferent pathways. Then we have pontocerebellar afferent pathway, and as the name indicates, the input is transmitted via the pontine nuclei, right? And the last is the olivocerebellar pathway. And the thing to remember, in all these types of afferent tracts, except olivospinocerebellar pathway, which connects the cerebellum via the climbing fibers, the rest of the tracts include the mossy fibers. We will discuss the differences between the two types of fibers, climbing fibers and mossy fibers, in detail. These two types of fibers, they run over these multiple cerebellar layers and send sensory input to multiple regions of central nervous system. The olivocerebellar pathway, it projects to the cerebral cortex via the climbing fibers, via while the rest of the pathways they project via the mossy fibers. So this is the thing to remember. The olivocerebellar tract is the exception, which involves the climbing fibers. We have discussed the afferent pathways, and this is the list of efferent tracts. Now this figure is taken from your textbook, Curtin Physiology 13th edition. You can see multiple efferent pathways. Efferent pathway are the output. Afferent pathway is the input. You can see the fastigial reticular pathway, again very important, related to the fastigial nucleus of the cerebellum. Remember there are four deep cerebellar nuclei: dentate nucleus, emboliform nucleus, globose nucleus, and fastigial nucleus. So lateromedially, most laterally is the dentate, and fastigial nucleus is the medial most nucleus. Remember, the medial most nucleus is the fastigial nucleus, and the lateral most nucleus is the dentate nucleus. Separate pathways from the vestigial nucleus, separate pathways from the dentate nucleus. Remember, emboliform and globose nuclei, they are collectively known as interposed nucleus as well. So if you read the term interposed nucleus or interposed nuclei, this is the collective terminology for the middle two deep cerebellar nuclei, that is globose and emboliform. So this is the summary of the afferent and efferent pathways of the three divisions of the cerebellum. The first portion is vestibulocerebellum. The input is from the vestibular apparatus and the vestibular nuclei. The nucleus involved is the medial most nucleus, that is fastigial nucleus, and the efferent is the lateral vestibular nucleus, also known as the Dieter's nucleus, Deiter, Dieter's nucleus. Then comes the spinocerebellum, and the input is from the muscle spindles, from the Golgi tendon organs, and the nuclei involved are the emboliform and globose. As we discussed earlier, the middle two deep cerebellar nuclei, emboliform and globose, they are collectively called as interposed nuclei. The spinocerebellum involves the interposed nuclei, and the output is the ventrolateral nuclei of the thalamus. And the third portion, the last, cerebrocerebellum, again the input is from the cerebral cortex via the pontine nucleus. Since the input is received from the pontine nuclei, that is the reason this portion is also known as pontocerebellum as well. If you remember the earlier slide, the other names for pontocerebellum are cerebrocerebellum and pontocerebellum because it receives the input from the pontine nuclei, and the deep cerebellar nuclei which are involved are the dentate nucleus, which is the lateral most cerebellar nucleus, and the output will be sent to same ventrolateral nucleus of the thalamus. So this is all for today's session. Today we discussed the basic anatomy of cerebellum, also known as mini brain or small brain. We can divide cerebellum on the basis of its anatomy into multiple lobes, into multiple zones. Similarly, we can divide cerebellum on the basis of its physiology, or you can say function, into vestibulocerebellum, spinocerebellum, as well as cerebrocerebellum. Vestibulocerebellum is related to the vestibular apparatus, hence controls the body balance, equilibrium, and control of extraocular movement. Spinocerebellum is related to the spinal tract and it controls the skeletal muscle tone and the movement of distal portion of upper limbs. And the third portion is the cerebrocerebellum, which is connected to the cerebral cortex via the pontine nuclei. That is the reason we call it as pontocerebellum as well. And this portion is responsible for programming of movement, planning of movement, timing and sequencing of rate, range, and direction of movement. So this is all for today. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.